In the previous two installments of FromSoftware's Echo Knight series, we at first, as Richard Osmond, explored the haunted ocean liner Orpheus and put an end to a generations-long family feud between the Osmonds and the Rockwells, concerning a mysterious red stone with the power to grant wishes. Then, in Echo Knight 2, as a different Richard Osmond, we traveled to the Clancy residence in an attempt to find our missing girlfriend, who was investigating her own past. This once again led us to the red stone and how its discovery and wish-granting power unraveled the Clancy family and everyone close to them. At the end of the Echo Knight 2 video, I asked, rather facetiously, where the series would go from there. We had a haunted ocean liner, a haunted mansion. I mean, what's next? I don't know, a haunted space station? Oh. So, yeah, in the third and final Echo Knight game, we travel to a mining facility on the surface of the moon. This time, as yet another Richard Osmond, we're looking for our missing fiancée, while all the while attempting to unravel the mystery behind a dense fog that has enveloped parts of the facility, turning some of the wandering souls into malevolent spirits. A dense, colorless fog that drives people mad, you say? FromSoftware has been using this trope long before Demon Souls was even a sparkle in Hidetaka Miyazaki's eye. So put on your spacesuit, adjust your BPM monitor, and let's travel to the moon to explore FromSoftware's ghost story. In space! Echo Knight Beyond. Echo Knight Beyond is a first-person, ghost-busting, space station-exploring, eyeball-bleed-inducing item hunt of a video game, developed by FromSoftware and released for the PlayStation 2 in 2004. It was originally titled Nebula Echo Knight in Japan before the name change for North America, and I don't think we're missing anything by not getting the original title. There are no mention of any nebulae in the game, and it takes place on the moon, so I don't know where the nebula came from. Maybe it just sounded cool. Anyway, it was released in Europe in 2005 as Echo Knight Beyond as well. Much like the first two games in the series, we're going to be encountering both friendly and not-so-friendly spirits, helping to ease their suffering and free them from this corporeal plane of existence. Unlike the first two games, this time we're doing it in the future. The first Echo Knight took place in 1937, the second in 1949. In this third game, we've blasted right past the second half of the 20th century, and even most of the first half of the 21st, to find ourselves in the year 2044. The opening cutscene sets the stage for several key plot points. We see a young woman floating through space in a casket, wearing a veil and wedding dress. The scene switches to a shuttle that's crashed into a facility on the moon's surface. A crew of astronauts, or cosmonauts as we'll come to find out, head toward the facility and find it seemingly abandoned. During their exploration, they encounter the ghost of the woman from the casket and are attacked one by several dark spirits. When we begin a new game, we're treated to a voiceover from the player character, Richard Osmond.
I thought I heard someone calling my name. My fiancée, Claudia, and I were on a space trip. Suddenly, there was an intense shock and roaring sound. A massive shock as the shuttle crashed onto the moon. That's all I remember. I'm slowly starting to come to. I can't sense that Claudia's here anywhere.
Richard wakes up to find a note scrawled on the back of the seat in front of him. Though maybe scrawled isn't the right word. That actually looks very carefully printed. High marks for penmanship. All Richard has on him is a photo of a woman named Claudia, a ring that belonged to her, and a pack with one syringe full of sedative. These are healing items. We'll find more syringes, but the pack can only hold 3 at a time. Like the other Echo Knight games, there are several control schemes to choose from, such as the classic shoulder buttons to strafe and look up and down configuration of older FromSoft games. But we've also got some more modern ones that actually make use of the control sticks of the PS2 controller. Imagine that. Neither of them feel quite right, though. There's one that puts moving and strafing on the left stick and looking and turning on the right, but it feels a bit stiff compared to most modern first-person games. Still, it's better than any of the other options. With this control scheme, R1 interacts with the environment. L1 is the run button. L2 opens an item menu. Select opens the larger menu that allows you to see your full inventory, as well as a map of the area you're currently in. There's also a notes screen full of descriptions of characters you've encountered, places you've discovered, as well as recordings that you found. More on that later. Finally, R2 controls the light on your space helmet. Many areas in Echo Knight Beyond are without power and very dark, so you're equipped with a searchlight. However, the searchlight runs on battery power. You can set it to low power mode to conserve battery life, but it will periodically need to be recharged by finding portable batteries scattered throughout the facility. These are not items that can be held in your inventory, though. When you interact with one, it'll be used immediately, so choose carefully when to recharge. I honestly never found this to be an issue, though. Low power mode was enough to see in most areas, and at certain points you'll restore power to the base and be able to see without the searchlight. Just remember to turn it off when not using it. And that's all for the controls. Exploring the cabin of the crashed shuttle reveals a broken android flight attendant who only repeats the same canned phrases.
She's in long line for your flight today. Communications. Emergency device. Please confirm.
The sound design and the relative emptiness of the places you explore lend this entry in the Echo Knight series a pretty stark atmosphere. Exploration is quiet for the most part. There's no background music, only the hum of machinery, the rattling of debris, and the occasional flickering of lights. Get used to the sound of Richard's footsteps and his breathing within the helmet. On the upper deck of the shuttle, Richard encounters the first ghost, blocking the way forward. As Richard approaches, the BPM meter in the lower left corner of the screen begins to rise. This is our life gauge in Echo Knight Beyond. Usually it sits somewhere around 80 when just walking around. Running for long distances raises it to near 100, and encountering non-hostile ghosts will usually cause it to rise to around 140. Stopping to rest and interacting with the non-hostile ghosts will bring Richard's heart rate back down to normal. Anyway, this first ghost is Dudley Tungsten. What a name. He was another one of the passengers aboard the shuttle when it crashed, and he's looking for his drinking flask. He asks Richard to retrieve it for him, rather rudely.
I'm no good without it. Bring it to me. Give it to me now.
Is that right, you f***ing drunk? If you were thorough while exploring the cabin, you may have found the flask already on a seat near the broken android. Many essential items are small or hidden, and it's a matter of carefully, and I mean very, very carefully, combing every nook and cranny of each room and passageway to find what you need. Locating some of these items is the equivalent of pixel hunting in old point-and-click adventures, except made endlessly more complex by being in a first-person perspective in a 3D environment. All I can say is harness your inner creep and rifle through every drawer, cabinet, and locker you come across. Mash the interact button on anything that looks suspicious, and even things that don't. Returning the flask to Dudley frees him, opening up the way forward. This moment introduces us to the basic gameplay loop in Echo Knight Beyond. As we proceed, we'll encounter many more ghosts who are, like Dudley, physically or non-corporally blocking our progress or are holding items that we need to progress. We have to solve puzzles and find objects throughout the facility that hold some kind of attachment to these spirits and return them to free their souls. It's exactly the same as the first two Echo Knight games. So after passing through a few more areas, Richard finds the entrance hatch to the facility the shuttle crashed into. This drops him into the water filtration area, which is filled with a dense fog. While crossing a long bridge, Richard encounters the first hostile ghost. When in the presence of spirits that seek to harm Richard, his BPM can quickly reach the upper 200s, depending on how close the ghost is to him. If the BPM goes past 300, Richard suffers cardiac arrest and dies. This is why we have a syringe pack. The syringes are filled with sedatives to lower Richard's heart rate. This effect is only temporary though. If he stays within range of an enemy ghost after using one, his BPM will start to rise again immediately. So we need to get the hell out of here. All Richard can do is turn and run to the next passage, and here he meets another friendly spirit, Nikolai Ivanov. At first, Nikolai doesn't want to let Richard pass, telling him there are monsters ahead and fearing that something awful will happen to Richard if he lets him go further into the facility. Hey, listen buddy, I don't know if you've heard, but nobody tells Richard Osmond what to do. Again, we're told to stay put, and again, no one tells Richard Osmond what to do. Richard shows him Claudia's photo, and Nikolai says he's seen this woman before. He realizes that Richard is searching for her, so he lets him by. Speaking to Nikolai further, he reveals that he was killed by the ghost of a little girl. Where have we seen that before? He also mentions the strange fog that has seeped into parts of the facility and states that a dead soul engulfed by the fog will become violent. He suggests finding a way to clear the fog and lets Richard know that he can see the ghosts through security cameras that are placed throughout the facility. Lots of hints about gameplay mechanics dropped in this short bit of dialogue, which is just classic FromSoftware design. Explore thoroughly here to find a broken host radio. We need this near the very end of the game, and it's extremely annoying if you don't notice it and miss picking it up right now. Up an escalator is the first monitor room of the game where we can use the security cameras that Nikolai mentioned. Each section of the facility has at least one monitor room. This is also where you'll find the save points, these red communication boxes on the wall. A few clues you need will be somewhere within the environment, only viewable from an angle a security camera gives you. Others can be gleaned by listening to the ghosts speak either to themselves or each other. Mostly though, you want to be on the lookout for these green ectoplasmic marks left behind by the ghosts when they were still alive. You'll need to really scour the environments through the security cameras to pick these out though. Zooming in on these marks will play scenes from the past, which reveal not only valuable information on the locations of certain items, but also details that help unravel the greater mysteries of the narrative. Another thing FromSoftware is great at is dropping you into a place where the main action has already occurred. The events that caused the downfall of this place have happened before you arrived. You're here in the aftermath, left to pick up the pieces and try to decipher what went wrong. As you encounter new characters, places, and bits of information, the notes section of the menu will update, filling out descriptions of who people were, how they were connected, what functions different places in the facility had. You'll also find a list of brief descriptions of the ectoplasmic recordings you found. While FromSoftware games prior to this were already experimenting with item descriptions to reveal lore and expand world building, I'm pretty sure Echo Knight Beyond is the first to make these notes absolutely essential to understanding the complete story. Events remain very opaque if you only watch the in-game cutscenes and listen to the ghostly NPCs. After leaving the monitor room, Richard passes through the nearby doors to the central hall, a large open area that acts as a hub connecting all of the major sections of the facility. Echo Knight Beyond sprawls out from this central hall, and every other area just kind of goes in a straight line. When you reach the end, you just need to double back to return to the center and take a different path. I've played most of From's PS1 games and a lot of their PS2 titles, especially the first-person ones, and they're all marked by level design that points toward what Miyazaki and his team's work on the Souls series would be like. They're satisfyingly interconnected places that make you want to explore to find the next path forward or the next shortcut that will drop you back into an area you've already been. Kingsfield, Shadow Tower, Eternal Ring, even the first two Echo Knight games all featured this kind of looping design. Echo Knight Beyond, though, just doesn't have it. I have to say, I feel like it has the weakest level design From's ever done in their more exploration-heavy games. It's not completely terrible, because the areas aren't that large, but I would have preferred more interconnectedness or clever shortcuts. There are only two ways open to Richard right now, the way he came from and another path straight across the hall. The escalators that lead downstairs are blocked off because of the power being out. When Richard enters the energy area on the other side of the central hub, he runs into someone who seems to know him.
It's been a while. What's the matter with you? You look strange.
Well, I mean, there are definitely oxygen leaks in this place on account of a space shuttle having crashed into it, which is why I'm wearing this spacesuit. Why aren't you wearing one?
Do I look funny?
Yes.
I've been alone since you left. Why don't you come to my room later? It's next to the center hall. We have a lot to catch up on.
The room is back in the center hall, a studio with a holographic image of a grassy field projected onto the walls. The mysterious man tells Richard that the shuttle crashed some time ago. Specifically when, he doesn't say, but it couldn't have been that long ago, right? I mean, Richard's just regained consciousness. This guy then reveals that he's an android, which explains the whole not needing a spacesuit thing.
You have something that you're looking for, right? Maybe I can help you out. Come back here from time to time. I'll be here, waiting.
That doesn't sound ominous at all. In one corner of the room is a painting of none other than Dudley Tungsten, the ghost on the shuttle that Richard freed. We'll see as we visit this room throughout the game, the android paints the ghosts that we freed, which is a good way to keep track of our progress. For now, there's only Dudley. There's also a sedative syringe on the table we can take. These will respawn periodically throughout the game, so it's a good place to stock up on healing. Clearly, this isn't Richard's first trip to this facility, but what's his connection to it? What occurred here to cause everyone to perish? What's up with that thick fog? Is Richard's fiancée, Claudia, already a ghost? How does this android fit into the whole thing? We've got plenty of mysteries to solve as we explore this place and try to put the pieces together. There are a total of 30 ghosts in Echo Night Beyond, but only 19 of them are necessary to free in order to complete the game and get the 2 normal endings. The other 2 endings require you to free all of the ghosts, as well as collect 2 special items from a room you can only access by freeing all of the ghosts. So, we'll get to that. For now, back to the energy area. There's a monitor room that can be used to scope out the locations ahead. You'll find some scenes from the past as well. The pilot of the space shuttle that crashed speaks to his co-pilot Victor about the accident. Through another camera, you can see the ghost of the pilot roaming around calling for Victor. Being able to see the pilot's movements here is going to be important for a later task. In the power transfer room, Richard meets the ghost of Marcel. He's looking for someone named Carol, but says he can't find her until he turns the power back on. Nearby is a monthly report that details the base's struggles with faulty equipment and frequent blackouts. The workers say they'll ask the director to contact headquarters, but the response will most likely be to continue focusing on the mining efforts. A fog starts to appear in different parts of the facility, and a Mr. Dado believes that the issue is with the ventilation systems. We also learn the facility has been plagued by oxygen shortages. Great. All of these monthly report entries are from the year 2040. The controls for the solar array that can be seen outside the window are in an adjacent room. We only need to enter today's date, which can be seen in one of the security cameras, to activate them. Today's date is August 13th, 2044, so this means those monthly logs were from 4 years ago. Entering the date repositions the solar panels, restoring power to the facility. With the power restored, Marcel moves from his spot, but he's left behind a video disc. Now, Richard can access the bottom floor of the central hall. There are 2 doors down here, but the one to the spaceport needs a level 3 keycard. The other door leads to the residential area, which is enveloped in fog. And here we encounter our first hostile ghost that we actually need to deal with. Say hello to Carol, Marcel's daughter. There's not much to do but duck into the nearest room, which conveniently happens to be a monitor station. Through the security cameras, we can spot an ID card in room 102. Some workers talk about yellow and red labeled chemicals that shouldn't be stored near each other because they cause a reaction. We can also watch Carol's movements through the main hallway. She calls out for her mother as she wanders the rooms. As soon as she enters one of the rooms, it's time to book it to room 102 and grab that ID card. Once Richard has it, he can head to the ventilation system control panel in the middle of the hallway and swipe the card to activate the vents. Fuck you, Carol! With the fog cleared, Carol can be found in room 106. She's back to normal now, or as normal as you can get for being a ghost, I suppose. I don't know how I feel about this fog clearing mechanic. Overall, it's more involved than how enemy ghosts were dealt with in the first 2 Echo Night games, but it also leaves them feeling less threatening. In Echo Night 1 and 2, you needed to get close and use an item to dispel the spirits. In Echo Night Beyond, you can't do that. You always need to be running away, or you die. So there are no moments where the ghosts creep toward you, phase through nearby walls, grab you, toss you around. You know, a typical Saturday night. You also never really get a good look at them. As soon as you hear that suspenseful music kick in, see the screen shake, the BPM meters start to rise, and hear Richard's breathing become more ragged, you're already bolting in the opposite direction. The enemy ghosts in the first Echo Knight had distinct designs. In Echo Knight 2, their designs were slightly less impressive, but still, they made their presence and threat known. Here, I feel like the BPM meter hampers that. While yes, there are all these stimuli and things happening when hostile ghosts appear, it all feels very surface level. In the earlier games, finding the items that bound the spirits to this world and learning of their fates added some emotional weight to what at first appeared to be simple antagonists. They held grudges and had lingering regrets that turned them into malevolent phantoms. In Echo Knight Beyond, they're all just whacked out on trippy moonfog. Whoa, bro, I don't know what I got up to last night. You say I killed a bunch of people? Fuck. That's wild. Anyway, Richard pops the video disc that was dropped by Marcel earlier into a nearby console, which plays a home movie of Marcel and Carol on a space shuttle heading toward the facility. Carol then runs off. When Richard follows her into the hallway, we see a scene of her being reunited with her father, and the two of them are freed. Carol leaves behind a headband, which can be taken back to Nikolai. When he realizes that the little girl is okay, he hands over an elevator key card, and he too is freed. So this is where I'll break for spoilers. If you'd like to experience Echo Knight Beyond on your own, I'd suggest dropping out of the video now. But you should come back later after you play it for yourself. I'm also going to sum up my thoughts on the Echo Knight series as a whole after the story section, so you can skip to this time if you just want my final thoughts, or you can use the chapter select. Just be forewarned, there are minor spoilers for all 3 games in that section. So anyway, if you're ready, let's pick apart this third and final Echo Knight game. You need to head back through the residential area to reach the elevator. On the way, you should stop into some of the rooms. Room 105 has a company letterhead in a closet that we'll need near the end of the game, believe it or not. And another room has the container of yellow chemicals that we saw in an earlier cutscene. Also an important item that's not needed until near the end of the game. Past the residential area is the elevator hallway. Using the key card Nikolai just handed over allows access to level B1. We can't get to B2 with this particular card. As soon as the elevator arrives down here, Richard's heart rate starts to rise. In the next hall, his movement becomes extremely slow, and... You're not actually under any threat here, but this is a fun little horror gag. Unfortunately, it's the first and last time that the game does anything like this, which is a real shame. I feel like they could have played more with how the ghosts interact with the player. In the monitor room, there are a few past scenes to discover. One interesting one involves a man who punches a wall panel and mentions the name Claudia, which is the name of Richard's fiancée. The man in the scene also mentions the name Kenneth and asks for more power. In the area where the facility is growing vegetables, there are 2 little kid ghosts that need to be navigated around. Reaching the room at the far end and activating the ventilation system calms them. They want the stuffed lion that somehow got stuck in the vegetable tanks, so Richard needs to use the control panel and play a little slide puzzle to move it down to the bottom. When Richard shows these 2 twin sisters the lion, they mention it was meant to be a gift for their brother, and they're freed. Finding some cleaning supplies and cleaning up a dirty mirror in one of the restrooms reveals that the brother's ghost has been sitting on Richard's shoulders. So that's why he's been moving slower and getting handprints all over his visor. God, this kid must weigh a metric ton. Or Richard has just been skipping leg day. Out in the hallway, showing the lion to the boy frees him. Before he goes, he mentions that he saw Claudia wandering around, calling for Richard. The boy drops the level 1 key card, so now we can access more parts of the facility. In the lab area, we get our first taste of distracting a ghost with security cameras so we can make a break for the room with the ventilation controls. The ghost is able to feel the presence of Richard watching it through the camera and will be drawn to that area of the room, eventually coming right up to the camera and shaking it around. This mechanic is pretty neat. In one of the past scenes, we find out that the facility was running short on food supplies. This is also the first mention of the red stone.
This is all the food we have left.
I see. Don't mention this to anyone. We'll still mine as planned.
Director, our company will... This facility...
No, I don't think so. Our company should know the value of the stone. It'll be all right, but only if I have that stone.
Famous last words. Another past scene shows a cat doing cat things and fucking shit up. We also hear a man breathing heavily and see something roll underneath one of the benches in the gravity training room. The seat here flips up, revealing that a chocolate coin is what we saw rolling under here in the cutscene. Okay. In the control room, where we saw the cat, there's a collar on the floor with a key on it. Checking the controls, we can see a ghost floating in 0G with food all around him, just stuffing his face, living his best life. Or afterlife, I guess.
Zero gravity disengaged.
Whoa! Ouch! What the?
Checking in with him, we find out that he came here to hide, but the gravity was turned off by the cat, and he ended up stuck in here. This ghost's name is Oliver, and he wants Richard to bring him all 3 of the chocolate coins that he dropped in this area. We already found one, and another is literally right under his ass. So we just toss some chocolate at him. I love the way that looks. We need one more coin, though. Next up is the fisheries area. This is where we distract the ghost with the security camera trick and book it for the control room to clear the fog. A ghost at the bottom of one of the pools here leaves behind Oliver's last chocolate coin. Oliver's not thankful at all. Now he wants a drink.
Boy, I'd sure like a drink right about now.
This takes us into food storage, where activating the machine in the center of the room spits out a canned drink, which can be given to Oliver, freeing him. Before he goes, he reveals that Claudia was heading to the work area of the facility. He also drops the level 2 keycard. Along the way, we encounter a hostile ghost again. This is actually the same ghost that was in the fisheries area. There's nothing we can do but run from it for now. Richard uses the level 2 keycard to enter the battery room. This is where we saw the ghost of the shuttle pilot wandering around earlier. We need to watch his movement from the monitor room nearby, then run to the battery room and charge the machine from the panel in front of it. This restores power to the room, so Richard can run back down to the lower level and activate the ventilation system to clear the fog here. The pilot stands in front of the battery charging station, lamenting the space shuttle crash that occurred. He wants us to find Victor, his co-pilot, and tell him they need to take responsibility for the accident. The pilot is also going to help us out much later on. Now that the fog has been cleared, the pesky ghost in the hallway will no longer be there, and we can head back to the work area. Entering here, we spot Claudia calling for Richard. She's headed down a hallway which can now be unlocked with the level 2 card. It's foggy in here, and son of a bitch. The ghost that's been stalking us returns. All we need to do is run back the way we came, leave, then come back in, and the ghost will be gone. This highlights one of the main complaints I have with Echo Night Beyond. There are quite a few moments where an enemy ghost appears in an area, but all you need to do is exit and re-enter to get them to disappear, even though you haven't cleared the fog yet. It's like From needed to meet a quota of threats toward the player, but because of the BPM mechanic, they couldn't just let the ghosts linger in certain areas. There'd be no way for the player to make it through without dying. So they included these despawn triggers, and it really makes no sense. These are the moments that make me think the BPM mechanic was a bad idea. In the previous Echo Night games, you had to move through dangerous areas, and it was all about maneuvering correctly and not getting caught and tossed around by the enemy ghosts. But now, because just being in the presence of a ghost for too long kills you, they had to resort to these kinds of cheap tricks, and it's a bit disappointing. It's also misleading, because you have to go through the work area to progress the game, but you've just seen there's a ghost that's blocking your path, so you may be inclined to not go that way and explore other areas, searching for a different way forward, but there aren't any. So, aside from being annoying and cheap, it's also kind of bad design that just confuses the player. Next, we enter the oxygen production plant, which is filled with fog and alarms going off. Through one of the security cameras, we can overhear a past conversation between two workers. They talk about the director and his best friend who fell and died when they went to the site where the red stone was found. They feel that the director received the stone in exchange for his friend's life. They mention the friend's name was Kenneth, a name we've heard before. If you're really straining your eyes, you can catch a glimpse of some repair tape that we'll need to solve a puzzle soon. There's also a sleepy ghost in one of the rooms, all tuckered out from a hard day of haunting. Another past scene shows two ghosts talking about the sleeping ghost. They also mention Nikolai, who was the ghost we met near the beginning of the game. These two are worried about their commander. They don't know if he's still alive. All of these interconnected crew members will be important to piecing together some of the events of the larger narrative. Richard needs to sneak past the sleeping ghost. This ghost has sleep apnea and periodically wakes itself up, so you need to time your movement because the way out of this room is through a pressure lock that takes time to adjust and open. Beyond the adjustment chamber is the lunar surface. This is where the game's physics and controls change slightly. Richard moves in slow motion out here. You thought Kingsfield 4 had slow movement speed? You ain't seen nothing yet. The run button also changes to a jump. You can't control your trajectory or even what direction you're facing while jumping. So once you hit that button, you're committed. Oh, and be careful of those fissures in the ground. Falling into them means instant death. A doorway off to the right is the entrance to the regolith mine. Inside, there's a room filled with fog with an altar and a ringing bell. The same enemy ghost that's been pursuing us is here, so Richard ducks into the monitor room. Inspecting the altar reveals a past scene where some characters discuss killing the director of the facility.
If we killed the director, then we can go home and everything will be okay, right?
I don't know. But priest...
Wait a minute, the priest floated that idea? These two discuss how the stone was the cause of all the misfortune the facility has suffered. We've now discovered the identity of the ghost who's been haunting us. It's this priest, whose name is revealed to be Nick Getchell in the notes. Using the same security camera trick as earlier to lure the ghost away from the mine entrance allows Richard to move down to the lift hallway. But we've got to be quick about riding this thing, because the priest's ghost is still following us. At the bottom are the ventilation controls that clear the fog of this location, and past that are the mines. This is a short area. Seeing a graveyard beneath the surface of the moon is an odd sight, and there's a ghost down here who talks about her husband, how they were together for 20 years and never really understood each other. There's also an extremely annoying platforming section here. You don't have to do it if you just want to finish the game, but again, if you want the best ending, you're going to have to suffer through it. It takes some trial and error figuring out when the best time to jump is, especially with the whole not being able to control yourself in mid-air physics. It took me several attempts to get this right. Luckily, the save room is not that far away, and I ended up taking the lift down, clearing the fog, riding it back up, and saving again, so I didn't have to do the whole ghost chase over and over. But still, having to ride the lift down and slowly make my way back up the hill with every failed attempt was extremely annoying. After about 20 minutes, I got it, and what's our reward? A tie clip. Great. The tie clip is a gift this woman bought for her husband, but showing it to her doesn't accomplish anything yet. She still feels that she wasted her life being married to him. Well, this is bumming me out, so let's get out of here for now. Back in the hallway with the altar, now that the fog is gone, Richard can freely explore the room and find a leather diary. The diary belonged to the woman we just met, and in it she complains about her husband and their fractured relationship. Turns out they were aboard the shuttle that crashed into the facility. This diary also confirms that whenever the shuttle crashed was after the events at the facility transpired, and everyone was already dead. Ghosts already wandered the halls. Back outside and up a hill is an entrance to another part of the facility. Richard enters a garage with a lockbox on the wall. We'll need the contents of this lockbox to proceed, but it requires 2 codes to open. A security camera inside reveals a scene of 2 people sabotaging the oxygen production plant. If you missed the repair tape earlier, this scene is also your clue on where to find it. Checking out the garage security cameras will reveal the first code for the lockbox. One last scene here confirms that the red stone the director found produced oxygen that solved the facility's shortages, but at what cost? So, first things first, Richard uses the repair tape to fix the leak in the oxygen production plant, but you'll be pursued by a ghost in this foggy area after doing so. Whatever you do, don't just jump from the platform while trying to get away. Attempting to use the ID card we have on the ventilation controls in this room throws an error. We need an executive level key card. In a control room nearby, Richard picks up a daily report. It belonged to a worker who had recently been promoted. He writes about receiving an, you guessed it, executive keycard. The report goes on to detail how the oxygen levels in the facility stabilized after the discovery of the red stone, but that a strange fog had entered the facility. The director had gone off the deep end, wandering the facility, clutching the stone and muttering to himself. Meanwhile, many workers reported seeing ghosts, but headquarters continued to push mining operations at the expense of all else. Due to this employee being unable to discover the source of the fog as well as mining delays, his executive position was revoked, and he threw his ID card away. You may be thinking, great, we need to scour this place looking for that ID card now. But just stop and look around for a second, and you'll notice a trash can next to the desk where you found the daily report. Voila. But the card is bent. The daily log mentions it's made from a special form memory alloy. Okay. Before leaving here, Richard interacts with the broken toy on the desk, which has a message from this employee's child. In the message is a date, and that's the second code needed to open the lockbox in the garage. Back in the oxygen production room, the lift is now active, so you can take it back up and find the area where the repair tape can be found. There's also a machine up here that's overheating, with water dripping on it, creating steam. Placing the bent executive ID card on the machine will straighten it, and though the company revoked this employee's executive status, they apparently forgot to deactivate his ID card. Richard can use it to clear the fog in this area, and we meet Paolo Dotto, the man who the ID belonged to. He thanks us for making the repairs and is freed, leaving behind the level 3 card key. Now, Richard can go back to the garage and use the codes on the lockbox to open it and get the key to the lunar rover. Inside the rover is a drained vehicle battery. If you remember, the pilot of the shuttle was standing in front of a charging station in the battery room. Back across the lunar surface to where the sleeping ghost is, Richard uses the executive ID to clear the fog in this area. The ghost wakes up now and is worried about whether his commander is alive. He wants some proof, so we'll have to go find it. With the level 3 key card, Richard can now unlock the path to the spaceport. The port itself is actually a ways from the mining facility and needs to be traveled to by linear transport, which Richard can start up in the control room by pressing this Final Fantasy VIII looking text box. Aboard the linear train is the ghost of Natalia, who's one of the crew members connected to Nikolai, the sleeping ghost, whose name is Igor, and two more ghosts, Christina and Dmitri, who are in the materials storage room near Igor. Whew. So now Richard has met 5 of the 6 crew members. The only one missing is the commander. Natalia offers to operate the linear car for Richard in exchange for him finding a pendant that she lost somewhere. This allows Richard to move back and forth between the facility and the spaceport as long as Natalia is still around. So we're off. The security cameras at the spaceport reveal more scenes from the past involving the dwindling food supply the workers here were dealing with. One person also mentions the director and his red stone. Apparently, the red stone grants wishes, but only with a sufficient sacrifice. Where have we heard that before? An old lady ghost is blocking the direct path to the spaceport lobby across the moving walkways. She's calling out for someone named Ruthie. The priest, Nick, is blocking the workers' passage that runs parallel to the main hallway. There's no way through the old lady, so that means we need to deal with the priest. Funny how the old lady is actually the more threatening of the two in this situation. Anyway, the workers' passage has 2 ventilation controls on either side of the pillars in the middle. Once you reach that halfway point, though, you'll have alerted the priest. Beyond the workers' passageway is the spaceport lobby, which has Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata playing, for some reason, but only in one part of the room. We can also get a view of another shuttle docked here, and Earth from the window, so very far away. There's a purple diary on one of the benches which belongs to a woman. She's received her recently deceased husband's inheritance. Apparently, other family members seek handouts from her, so she's left with the only one she trusts, Ruthie, on a space trip. This, unfortunately, ended up being the shuttle that crashed into the facility, and now she and Ruthie are stranded here. The woman doesn't trust any of the other passengers, so she and Ruthie have wandered off alone, arriving at the abandoned spaceport where she's found a music box that plays her husband's favorite song. Now that Richard's over here, he can enter the main hallway from the back and use the controls to push her along on the moving platform, and then run and activate the ventilation system without the old lady ghost noticing him. Speaking with her reveals that she's looking for little Ruthie, who turns out to be the cat we've seen before. We've also picked up her collar, which has a key attached to it. The key unlocks the old lady's luggage, and inside is a cat bell that's used to call Ruthie. She can be found aboard the docked shuttle. And I don't know what it is about the docking hallway that leads to the shuttle, but I found it to be the creepiest spot in the entire game. Maybe it's the utter silence or the fact that it's completely isolated from the rest of the environment. It's just strange. Anyway, entering the shuttle and checking the security cameras reveals it to be a Russian vehicle. It's pretty neat that they changed all of the language on the screens to reflect that. Back in the crew quarters, when Richard enters, he hears the murmur of a cat and sees some stuff get knocked off a table. Like I said earlier, it's nice to know that even in death, cat's just gonna cat. Ruthie follows when Richard rings the bell, and leading her back to the spaceport has her running off to where the old lady is. On her way, she knocks the music box out from under one of the benches here. I found her for you, lady, like you told me to. When these two are freed, the old lady drops Natalia's pendant. So it turns out this old bag was the one who stole it. Now who's suspicious, huh? After traveling back to the facility by linear train, Richard returns Natalia's pendant, and she speaks more about what happened to her and her crew. She mentions Nikolai and the host radio. So if you show her the broken radio that Richard picked up way back in the beginning of the game, she'll tell him that Christina, one of the ghosts in the material storage room, should be able to fix it. Natalia gives Richard a cigar that was given to each of the crew members by their commander. She says to show it to the others to get them to trust him. So, these 6 were the ones aboard the shuttle docked at the spaceport. They stopped here to refuel, apparently because of a mistake Natalia made in checking the fuel gauge, and found the facility deserted, except for the thick fog and the malicious spirits, which we saw play out in the opening cutscene of the game. Again, classic FromSoftware storytelling, that someone's minor error or hubris caused a calamity that snowballed out of control. Honestly, just a classic tragic narrative device. We need to head all the way back to the other crew members, but on the way, if we stop into the studio to see the progress of the android's paintings, he'll say some interesting things.
A long time ago, you told me what that red stone was. You got that stone in exchange for the death of your best friend. You kept your silence. Have you found an answer since then? Oh yes, how is she? The woman you valued more than anything. Yes, it was she who created me.
We'll come back to this in a bit. When Richard reaches Igor, the sleeping ghost, he shows him the cigar, and the ghost heads off to let the others know that the commander is around. In materials storage, Richard shows the radio to Christina, who fixes it up, and they finally make contact.
Commander, can you hear us? Over.
Who is this? Is everyone all right?
Commander, we are all right. This is Igor.
Yes, I am right as well. We were lucky.
Commander, this is Christina. We are all okay here.
Everyone's all right.
Commander, where are you now? Let us meet somewhere.
I am in the rest area next to the center hub. Where are you guys?
We are at the work site. We will start heading there now.
Affirmative. I'll wait for you here. See you soon.
After these 3 ghosts are freed, Richard takes the host radio back and heads to the rest area where the commander, Sergei, is waiting. We've actually seen Sergei wandering around various parts of the facility, even out on the lunar surface, looking for his crew. He was never able to be interacted with until now. When Richard hands over the host radio, Natalia contacts the commander. He wants to give her a pocket watch that he dropped in the residential area, so he hands over the level 4 key card and is freed. There's a door in the renovation area that's locked behind a level 4 card, and it leads to an office as well as some holding cells. A ghost working at a desk here is waiting for official release papers for a prisoner. If we check the security cameras, we see a past scene that shows supposedly the commander, Sergei, being attacked in that hallway and dropping his pocket watch. A ghostly hand reaches out from one of the cells and pulls it in. Through a camera inside that cell, we can see a ghost, and another past scene that shows an argument between the prisoner and another man who's revealed to be the director. He says the red stone granted his wish at the cost of Kenneth's life. Another camera inside the operating room will reveal the location of a document you need to solve the next puzzle. Heading through the cell area to the operating room, Richard finds a computer in back with a prison release document ready to be printed. Printing it right now doesn't satisfy the bureaucratic ghost in the office, though. It needs to be printed as an official document. We already found the letterhead document, but if you missed it, the residential area isn't too far away. But your only clue on where to find it is the documents on the shelf in the residential section. Which, I mean, I guess that counts as a shelf, but it's in a closet too. Pretty rough. Anyway, printing the official release satisfies the ghost in the office, and his long day at work is finished. This also unlocks the holding cells. The ghost who was imprisoned goes to exit his cell and tells Richard that he was sent to jail for threatening to rat out the director.
Well, here's better than being left in the basement, I suppose. The priest is, I am sure, dead by now. If left in a place like that, he'd be gone in no time. Take this. I don't need it anymore.
So we get some more cryptic clues about a basement and the priest's death. The man then hands over a laboratory key and is freed. On the floor of the cell is the commander's pocket watch. There's one more door to unlock in this area, and we need to use the just acquired lab key to access it. Inside is the last ventilation control panel, so now the entire facility is free of fog. On a desk nearby is an electronic organizer, which has notes about the red stone and how it solved the oxygen shortage on the facility. Wish granted. It's revealed on the next page that the organizer belonged to the director, who must keep operations on schedule. Claudia can join me here then. If you haven't already guessed, we are the director. But that doesn't really help to explain anything. If we were on the facility the whole time, if it was us in the past of the security camera footage, how did we end up on the crashed shuttle? There's more going on here. The organizer has notes about the food shortage and how everyone slowly died. The final page says, "Orb, the secret lies in these colors." This is a clue on how to open the color-coded lock on the closet in this room. Orb, orange, red, blue. Inside are some red chemicals. We picked up the yellow chemicals near the beginning of the game and were told in a past scene that mixing them would have volatile results. As Richard turns to leave, he finds the android from the studio standing in the room with him.
You and Claudia are apart. And all the people who got involved with this facility have lost their lives. But they're also bound by memory. Remember me? I'm Kenneth Livingston. This place has quieted down a lot. This picture will be done soon.
So this android is a replica of Kenneth, the director's friend, who lost his life in the mines when the red stone was found. The director was searching for a way to fix the oxygen shortages in the facility. The red stone granted his wish by becoming an oxygen-producing mineral, but a sacrifice was needed for this wish to be granted, and so Kenneth died to grant that wish. All of this will only make sense if you played the previous two Echo Knight games, where the nature of the red stone, or soul stone as it's actually called, is made clearer. It's never explicitly stated anywhere in the game, but I believe the fog is also a way for the stone to receive further sacrifices, by turning the dead souls that wander here into malicious spirits that sacrifice more people. In the second game, Albert Clancy had to continue sacrificing people to the red stone in order for his wish to be granted. Again, the whole fog thing is never explained in Echo Knight Beyond, so if anyone has any other theories about it, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Anyway, there are a couple of things to clean up before we get to the endings. First of all, Richard can take the pocket watch back to Natalia to free her. Just make sure you're all done exploring the spaceport, because after she's gone, there won't be anyone to operate the linear car anymore, so you can't travel back there. Richard can also head back to the crashed shuttle where the game started and place the charged battery in the open slot in the generator room. This gives access to the VIP rooms where he finds the body of Norman Spinell. Next to him is a letter he wrote to his wife, Nancy, the ghost in the graveyard in the regolith mine. Speaking of the mine, now that all the fog in the facility is cleared, we find the priest, Nick, kneeling in front of the altar. He hands over a rosary and says to free Kayla and Jeffrey before he himself is freed. Jeffrey was a name we heard mentioned in the past scene where the two ghosts were sabotaging the oxygen plant. Heading to the graveyard in the mine and giving Nancy the letter from her husband has her still thinking he was foolish, but she regrets tossing away the present she got for him. Giving her the tie clip now causes her to realize that she misses him and frees her spirit. With that taken care of, Richard heads back to the lunar surface to a corner near the facility covered in ice. Combining the red and yellow chemicals causes them to melt the ice. I don't know if this would actually work on the surface of the moon, but I'm not a physicist, so whatever. Down this hatch is a long stairway and a room. Through a window here is a frozen area with 3 bodies. One is the body of the priest. The other 2 are Kayla and Jeffrey. Richard finds their ghosts in the corner, but they want nothing to do with him. Since Richard was the director, they blame him for everything that happened on the facility and all of the deaths that occurred here. They also reveal that Richard was the one who locked the priest in here for questioning his actions with regards to the use of the stone. I'm guessing that he also found out it was Kayla and Jeffrey who sabotaged the oxygen plant and locked them in here as well. This explains why the priest was so hell-bent on attacking Richard and followed him around the facility. He was angry that Richard had let all of this happen. So at least one ghost in this game was acting on a grudge, but he's still fine after the fog is lifted. Would have been neat if he wasn't, and we had to find some item to calm him like in the first games, but oh well. Showing Kayla and Jeffrey the priest's rosary causes them to remember the priest's teachings of forgiveness, and they hope that Richard too can be saved. They tell him to head to the observatory before being freed, and they drop the key to the observatory. At this point, all of the ghosts are freed, and the observatory key is the final item we need to finish the game. So let's talk about the endings. We could actually head up to the observatory right from the beginning, but the door to enter was locked. Now that we can unlock it, Richard enters to find Claudia. She says her wish was to see Richard one last time, then reveals the red stone. She asks what Richard wished for, and we get a choice of whether to accept or refuse the stone. Choosing yes and taking the stone causes Claudia's ghost to just disappear. Richard finds her body behind the statue in this room and holds the red stone aloft before plunging it into himself to be with Claudia forever. Choosing no and not accepting the stone shows Claudia relieved that Richard has given up his obsession. She says she was happy with him and thanks him before being freed. Richard finds her body behind the statue and carries her to the central hub. He sets her down there, and the camera sweeps up to show Earth in the windows above. But neither of these endings give answers to the question I asked earlier. If we really are the director of the facility, how did we end up on the crashed shuttle? Well, if you saved all of the ghosts in the game, when you enter the observatory hall, you'll meet Kenneth there. He says to come to the studio where he's completed his painting. There, you won't find Kenneth, but you'll find all of the ghosts you freed painted on the walls. And on the table in the center of the room will be a master key. This key allows access to the B2 level from the elevator in the residential area. If you remember the cryptic words of the prisoner from earlier,
Well, here's better than being left in the basement, I suppose.
On level B2, there's a long, dark hallway that leads to one room. Inside is a mummified corpse and a painting of Claudia. On the desk is a ring, as well as a letter to Claudia. It reads, "My dearest Claudia, it has been a while since I last wrote you. I hope things are well. We continue to face new challenges here every day, but I'm determined to see it through. As you know, building a lunar facility was a dream both my father and I shared. I have every intention of making sure the project is a success. I realize my leaving just before the wedding was abrupt and must have hurt you terribly, but as soon as everything is in order here, I will come for you straight away. Please be patient just a little while longer, my dear. I will write to you again soon. Richard Osmond." So this mummified corpse is that of the director, Richard Osmond. Then who the hell are we? With the ring and the letter in hand, we enter the observatory. When Richard, or this imposter Richard, encounters the ghost of Claudia, he hands over the letter and the ring.
Richard, why did you go? You left me behind. He disappeared, so I created you to make you look like him and to replace him. You are an android, not the real Richard.
From learning that Kenneth is an android, we know that Claudia has the skills to build them. So she created us, the player character, as a replacement for the real Richard, who left before the wedding to run the mining facility on the moon. We now know what happened here, and why Richard stopped contacting her. Most likely, Hoshioka Materials, the company in charge of this operation, covered up the details of the incident and provided little information as well. The replacement Richard clearly wasn't enough for Claudia, so she booked passage on the space shuttle with the android Richard in hopes of finding the real Richard. I don't know what the point of bringing the android along was. Maybe she wanted to show that she had a fake Richard so she didn't need the real one anymore to make the real Richard jealous? I don't know. In any case, the shuttle crashed, causing the android Richard to be non-functional. Everyone in the facility had already died, the fog was here, evil ghosts around, a lack of food. Everyone aboard the shuttle also died, including Claudia. Then, sometime later, android Richard finally gained functionality, and our journey through the facility began. Claudia offers the android the stone, and again we get a choice. Answering yes and accepting the stone disappoints Claudia, who disappears, wishing that the android was the real Richard. He finds her body behind the statue, holds the stone aloft, but this time doesn't plunge it into himself. Answering no, Claudia realizes with the return of her ring and with Richard's letter that he loved her the whole time, but succumbed to the tragedy of what took place here. She's freed, proclaiming that she loved him as well. The android finds Claudia's body behind the statue and takes her to a cathedral-like location somewhere else on the facility that we never had access to during gameplay. Here, he puts her body in a casket and launches it into space, just as we saw in the opening cutscene. The android Richard is then left alone on the facility. Although, I guess Kenneth is still around somewhere. He walked away after you met him for the last time in the observatory hallway, so he's probably still around somewhere. But either way, android Richard looks up at the Earth and the screen fades to black. Congratulations on achieving the true ending. One thing you may be wondering if you've played the other Echo Knight games or watched my videos on them is where the astral pieces are. Collecting astral pieces was the main reason to exorcise the spirits in the first two games. Well, there are none in Echo Knight Beyond, and by extension that means the mysterious merchant/god/devil character is nowhere to be found in this game either. Which is such a shame, if only for the fact that I wanted to hear his voice again, especially after Echo Knight 2 only featured a Japanese dub.
This is a special potion that I've made. It may be weak, but it has the power to cure you when you are possessed.
But alas, no astral pieces, so no conniving ethereal being in this game. Bummer. So, final thoughts. I know I'm probably going to disappoint a lot of people who have been asking for me to cover this game and finish off the Echo Knight trilogy, but I just thought Echo Knight Beyond was not that interesting. I didn't really like the changes it made to the core gameplay. The heart rate monitor and the security camera recordings felt like missteps that made the whole experience less engaging. I liked that the ghosts actually felt like they were haunting you in previous games. They were evil spirits enraged by grief and regrets. In Echo Knight Beyond, they feel kind of cheap because they're only aggravated due to the fog. Even the priest, who follows you sort of throughout the game and has real reasons to hold a grudge against you, just becomes docile after the fog is lifted. And I really didn't like how sometimes they can just be dealt with by artificially hitting despawn triggers. The security cameras had some neat mechanics attached to them, like being able to distract ghosts and spot clues, but I preferred the actual trips to the past where you could move around and interact with things, as opposed to these past cutscenes that you only get to watch. And overall, the characters and plot here were less memorable. It feels like From were striving for some kind of realism, something more down to earth in Echo Knight Beyond. Poor choice of words there, but you know what I mean. Some players may welcome that approach, especially after all the shenanigans and ridiculousness of the first two games, but to be honest, I missed the wackiness. Like, Echo Knight's 1 story makes no sense. There's not even a reason given as to why most of it is set on an ocean liner. Feels like they did it just because it was an interesting setting, but there are some fun moments throughout that story. Echo Knight 1 feels like a real caper, unraveling the mystery of this generations-long family feud and the hunt for the mysterious red stone. I feel like the puzzle puzzles and the ghost enemies are also the most memorable in the first game. Echo Knight 2 is more tightly crafted story-wise, but takes a step back with its haunted mansion setting. It's just not as memorable as the ship. The sequel makes up for it with the interconnected stories about a family doomed after one of its members finds the red stone and embarks on a bloody quest to bring his deceased lover back to life. And I still think about moments from that game's story now and then. Echo Knight Beyond has a more unique setting that's hampered by bland level design, further hampered by frustrating item hunting, further hampered by a dull system of dealing with ghosts by being an HVAC repairman. And I feel like while some of the ghosts' individual stories are good, they aren't tied together as neatly as in the second game. So things feel a bit more scattered. Like, did we even need the crew of the Russian shuttle to be there? Did it really add anything to the story of the facility? When the travel shuttle crashed, everyone aboard already knew that the facility had fallen into ruin. So the Russian crew and their story didn't offer any revelations. Just felt extraneous. I liked the twist at the end, especially in the true ending, but you can kind of see it coming pretty early on. And some of the details still don't make sense to me. Like, why did Claudia make an android Kenneth to begin with? She made it after arriving at the facility. How did she have the time or resources to do that with ghosts around and food supplies dwindling? Feels like the only reason that was thrown in was to clue you into the true ending. Feels very artificial. Sorry. But yeah, so if I had to recommend an Echo Knight game to anyone interested in the series, I'd say the first game is the one to choose. It's a fun little experiment that has satisfying puzzles, a creative setting, and a wackiness to it that makes it fun. Don't get me wrong, none of the Echo Knight games are bad. They're all enjoyable. I just enjoyed Echo Knight Beyond the least. It felt kind of bland compared to the previous games. Still a worthwhile experience, but not as inventive or memorable as I feel like it could have been. FromSoftware would return to Ghost Stories with a sort of spiritual successor to the Echo Knight series in 2018's Bureaucracy, but until that gets released on a platform other than PSVR, I don't think I'm ever going to play it. No way I'm buying PlayStation VR for one minor game. So, that's it for Echo Knight Beyond and the Echo Knight series. I hope you enjoyed my analysis, and thank you very much for watching if you hung around this long. If you liked the video, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all the YouTube things. I appreciate everybody who watches my videos or subscribes to the channel, but I have to give an extra special thanks to all the dungeon dwellers who support on Patreon and through YouTube memberships. They make it so I don't have to worry about YouTube's stupid numbers game so much, which is nice. I like being able to make videos about what I want to make videos about, and still be able to spend all my time doing that. It's great. So if you'd like to support my efforts, you can click the Patreon link in the description to become a patron, or hit the join button on the video page to become a YouTube member. All paid members get their names in the videos. They also get to watch videos a couple days before I make them public on YouTube. They get to vote in occasional polls on what I cover next, and they get access to the Dungeon Dwellers archive. Bonus videos of stuff that I want to talk about, but I don't have as much to say on as the normal videos. I'm working on the next bonus video right now and the next main video, so yeah, lots of stuff going on behind the scenes. If you support with $5 or more each month, you get your name read out loud at the end of videos like these Dungeon Architects. Antichrist Alex, Spenifer94, Blake Golan, Bliblio Jones, Chaos Arcanum, Dan, David Carr, David Host, Dilatar Tepes, Dirt Possum, Dollar Store DJ, El Jaguar, Emmeline Payne, Eugene, Garbage Person, Glenn Haven, Goats and Goblins, Half HP, High Food Court, Industrial Illusion, Izzy Lexus, J-Bud Airline, John B, John Paul Williams, Joshua Ayers, Justin Darnell, Kale, Captain Ketchup, Kenny Mitchell, Kevin Hanley, Krizik, Crunk Wizard, Kiowa, Lunar Veil, Magic Circuit, Max Grosshandler, Meownarchy, Micah Powers, More Tags Gaming, Mr. Loser, Mr. Eater, Nick Wolf, Nom de Guerre, Paul Fierce, Rez, Richard Cutting, Richard Sanchez, Rog Yu, St. Murray, Shannon Gates, Shivering Dova, Sigma Simp 69, Silatixo, Sway Evenly, The Stoic One, Vinci, Volfram C, White Like Eyes, and Zach Diedrich, as well as these dungeon connoisseurs: 84D93R, Alberto Amatucci, Alexis Barragan, Andy Rahman, Andrew Toviniti, Andy Kaiju, Angin01, Anthony Labella, Aronai Saez, Arrested Rabbit, Sentient Toaster, Burger Von Burger, Bewildering Avocado, Blue Mantis, Bonsai, Bunzo, Keiichi, Captain Swing, Churm Slurm, Claim, Claire Myers, Cloudy Wizard, Concrete Mascara, Cormac, Crassus Zero, Crippler Jones, Chris LaFord L, Crooked Rook, Dale Walden, Daniel Tallow, Daphne, Days Clockwork, Deco, Deroco, Deus Ex Brachina, Devil's Honey, Dr. Jellybean, Drebo Bebop, Dungeon Chili, Fangro, Francine Bridge, Fremder, Glitterthroat, Hokon Boyum, Harvey Bodega, Herman, Hotdog 23, Icehammer 82, Indigo Happy, Irregular Rob, It's a Mia Mia, Nekokami, Jack Roberts, James Chambers, James Ray, Jason Cook, J. Rob, Gemma, Jen, Joan Valise, Joe Gother, Jollybean, John Norris, Joshua Weber, Karen Rosenau, Lady Nagram, Lampshader, Leonardo Schwarz de Souza, Liana, Lux Custodes, Mira, Macrophage, Man with Confetti, Masakishi, Matthew Wall, Matt Norred, McEldritch, Meatman, Michael Oliver, Minced Meat, Miss M, Mr. Independent, Monkey Kid 61, Not Poncho Esquire, Nicolas Polstar, Old Dead Lemons, Olof Albine, Please Keep Making Videos, Prince Goof, Rezo 55555, Ribbon Black, Roland, Sable, Salty Groove, Scorpix 22, Sensei Wolfman, Shart King, Sean, Cicerin, Skyclad Weeb, Slycat, Solar, Sorbet, Spencer Newton, T, Talony Dew, Taylor Martin, TCB, Thief of 16-Bit Technology, Tor Dragon, True Axiom, Tuesday Twin, TV's Brent, Violet the Insatiable, Warrior Song, Where Am I? Help, Wolfenheim, Zakor, Your Man in Japan, and Zorik. Thank you all for your support, and thank you once again for watching. Hope you all have a great end of the year holiday, no matter where in the world you are. This is my last video for 2024, unless you're a dungeon dweller. So I'll catch you in 2025 with the next one. Until then, Echo Knight Beyond. Check it out. Dungeon Chill. Out.